The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
A very good day to you. With the news at this time, I am Tiana Jordan. To begin the news, here is a look at the lead stories. The government will circulate draft amendments to Guyana's electoral laws next week. One day after double murder accused Capildio escaped from the Lusignan prison, he was recaptured. The Region 4 chairman plans to reprimand an Alliance for Change council for his outburst over concerns about his exposure to a COVID-19 person. In regional news, the Caribbean community is getting ready to approve the use of an antiviral pill to combat the coronavirus COVID-19. And internationally, U.S. President Joe Biden unveiled a revamped $1.7 trillion spending plan on Thursday, calling it a historic investment in the country's future. The details of these and other stories will be coming up right here in just a moment.
Not seeing returns on your dollar? Then advertise with News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM and see results. We give you competitive rates, wide coverage, appealing programs, streaming online worldwide on dem waves, and we give you value for your money. You'll see returns when you advertise with us. Call our helpful staff today on 223-1056 or 223-1041 for those competitive rates. 103.1 FM, accurate information blended with great music.
And now the news in detail. President Irvin Ali minutes ago announced that draft amendments to the election laws will be circulated for public consultations next month. Emerging from the fiasco from the March 2, 2020 general and regional elections, the Guyana government had promised to amend sections of the Representation of the People Act. The amendments, the government has said previously, would include the mandatory use of statements of poll to declare election results. At first tally sheets had been used, and these had led to a controversy, especially about the accuracy and validity of the votes cast in Region 4. The man who is charged with the murder of a Lusignan businessman was this morning recaptured a day after he escaped from the Lusignan prison. A Guyana Prison Service spokesman confirmed that Capildio Gangadin was nabbed. Details are expected to be provided later today. Mr. Gangadin, who was charged after he confessed to stabbing 21-year-old businessman Ganesh Basad during a robbery on October 15th, escaped from the Lusignan prison on Thursday morning. The Guyana Prison Service has said that Mr. Gangadin was housed in the quarantine unit at the penal institution. Investigators had said that he tampered with the tent unit, which gained him entry into the prison farm, where he jumped the gate and escaped into the nearby dump site. He was discovered missing during a routine check at 4 a.m. yesterday morning. A mobile police patrol had arrested Gangadin, and the jewelry of the victim was found in his possession. He stabbed 21-year-old Ganesh Basad in the neck and robbed him of cash and jewelry. Region 4 Chairman Daniel Seram says Councillor Amanat Chenkan will be reprimanded for his behavior at the next scheduled meeting. There was an exchange from the floor to the chair after the councillor refused to leave yesterday's meeting because he had been in contact with other persons who may have been COVID positive.
I will not be because you never tell me that
This meeting is adjourned in the interest of public health of all councillors.
You would like to adjourn it because you know I'm short. You never tell me nothing official. You're sending messages to me. What an idiot. He's afraid of what's going to happen today. I don't have it. I just came from the area so I got tested again. I'm not going to answer you. This, you know, really, sun, what they call it, moon or something, they catch them. You catch up in a too.
Mr. Jenkin, who is an Alliance for Change councillor, insisted that he was tested negative twice, once last week and again on Thursday. However, he did not provide any proof of his test result. Regarding the no-confidence motion against the chairman and the vice chairman, the regional chairman says he relied on the law, a precedent against the former Region 4 chairman, Clement Curlett, and parliamentary procedure to remove the motion from the agenda.
There's no motion currently before us. A motion was submitted on the 24th of October, 2021. I would have examined such a motion, right, and I would have dismissed such a motion. Right? The motion that came before me in its content, right, after going through the 2801, the 2809, and the parliamentary standing order, is of no material effect, inconsequential, a waste of time of my council, and strictly political in its crafting. Therefore, in given all of the reasons that I've given so far, right, I decided not to entertain such a motion and I dismissed it.
Mr. Chenkin insisted that the regional chairman could not unilaterally throw out the motion, but by a decision of the council only. Alliance for Change AFC councillor Nielsen Mackenzie said he was now looking forward to the next council meeting because ultimately they want to move the council forward, and it is the business of the people that matters more than the individual persuasions. The AFC has already publicly criticized APNU for breaking a formal agreement that the AFC would have been supported for the position of vice chairman. However, when it had already gone to a vote last year, the APNU nominated Messrs. Seram and Sandy for both the chairmanship and vice chairmanship. President Irfan Ali today appeared to back down from his long-held position that he would not be meeting with opposition leader Joseph Harmon to discuss key constitutional appointments. They include substantive appointments for the positions of Chancellor, Chief Justice, and the Police Commissioner. Today, he told a news conference that he is prepared to meet with Mr. Harmon in accordance with Guyana's constitution. President Ali says that Mr. Harmon now has a moral problem to reconcile how he will meet with the president for a government that he does not recognize. Mr. Harmon and his Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change opposition coalition have said they do not recognize the government because of alleged electoral fraud by the People's Progressive Party. The Ministry of Health says the current stock of AstraZeneca vaccines expires at the end of November and appeals to persons who have not taken their second dose to do so now. It was revealed by Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony that a number of persons are yet to take the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine.
And we currently have the second dose available to them. If they don't come, and by the end of November, if these vaccines then expired, then we don't have any in stock. We'll have to wait until we get another shipment or we purchase another shipment, and that would be a pity because we've had the vaccines, and if people don't come and take it and they expire, then, we'll have to look at other options. And that's very unfortunate because if you get the vaccine, you want to make sure that people use it so that they can protect themselves.
The ministry is facing an uphill challenge to get persons to return for the completion of their vaccine regimen. Dr. Anthony says the percentage between first and second dose is a wide gap.
Before you can get a second dose, you have to get a first dose. So these numbers are reflective of the percentage of persons who got their first dose and now came back for their second dose. So when you look at how much person got their first dose and how much got their second dose, there's a difference of 139,000 people. So there's still a lot of people who need to come back to get their second dose vaccine.
The Health Ministry has recorded 241,211 adults and 17,898 children ages 12 to 17 who are fully vaccinated, and 380,267 adults and 27,198 children are partially vaccinated as of October 27, 2021. A 49-year-old man of Essex Street, New Amsterdam, has died as a result of the caving in of a mining pit. The incident occurred on October 24th. Dead is Bertie John Williams, who was a pitman at a mining operation at Whitehall Backdam, Pataro. Investigators were told that he was working when a portion of the pit's wall caved in, covering him. The other workers managed to escape to safety. The lifeless body of the man was later recovered and taken to the Midday Regional Hospital, where an official pronouncement of death was given. The body of the deceased is at the hospital's mortuary as investigations continue. Police say that a 16-year-old boy is one of two persons who confessed to robbing an overseas-based Guyanese woman last Monday at number 73 Village, Quarantine Berbice. Also arrested is a 34-year-old man who is a hire car driver of number 72 Village, Quarantine. Police say they are searching for a third suspect. The overseas-based housewife and her son have said they were robbed of a vehicle and valuables after returning from a wake at number 73 Village, Quarantine Berbice. The suspects had allegedly carted off $150,000 in jewelry, phone and other items valued at $60,000 and one Fielder's wagon car bearing registration number PTT 864. The suspects used the car to escape the scene. The bandits had forced their way into the house from the door to the lower flat of the two-storied building. A laborer from Sophia, Greater Georgetown, has been charged with break-and-enter and larceny at a house in Portmorant, Quarantine Berbice. Police say 20-year-old Shakil Flats was yesterday granted $60,000 bail. He was not required to plea. Mr. Flats is accused of break-and-enter and larceny at the dwelling of Fenella Cozier. The case was postponed to November 22nd for report. And now in regional news. A potentially life-saving antiviral pill for the treatment of COVID-19 in adults could be soon in use in Barbados and elsewhere in the Caribbean community. Executive Director of the Caribbean Public Health Agency, Dr. Joyce St. John, said that once the drug molnupiravir receives World Health Organization approval, CARPHA would be making a recommendation for use to CARICOM. The announcement comes a day after drug maker Merck & Co. said it would license qualified pharmaceutical firms worldwide to produce the oral medication under an agreement with the United Nations-backed Medicines Patents Pool. It was not immediately clear whether pharmaceutical companies in the Caribbean would be among those in line to produce the pill under the license agreement. Merck said earlier this month that a recent study of molnupiravir showed that it cut hospitalizations and deaths from COVID-19 in half. Molnupiravir, which is still awaiting approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, works by blocking the ability of the coronavirus to replicate. If approved, it will be the first COVID-19 treatment in the form of a pill. As the race to achieve herd immunity progresses, the Antigua and Barbuda government is intensifying its efforts to reach that goal. The government says it now plans to implement a private sector vaccine mandate by amending the public health regulations. According to the cabinet notes those private sector employees who have 5 or more persons on staff must have all staff members vaccinated. According to Information Minister Melford Nicholas, the government hopes that November 15th, private sector employees would have already had at least 1 dose of a COVID vaccine. He added that this new measure is another move by the government to attain herd immunity. Mr. Nicholas says the Antigua and Barbuda government hopes to get at least 80,000 persons fully vaccinated by the end of November. In the past, groups like Antigua and Barbuda Employers Federation, for example, have voiced support for private sector vaccine mandates, while others had maintained that individual rights must be factored into the equation. There are, however, a few business places that would have already made such stipulations. The hotel industry, for instance, whose properties are mostly privately owned, would have mandated such a policy for their staff weeks ago. And now for the international news, here's the latest coming from the BBC World Service.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned that the UN Climate Summit in Glasgow next week might not meet its objectives. Speaking ahead of the G20 meeting of world leaders in Rome, Mr. Guterres criticised recent climate pledges by governments. He said formal commitments still condemn the world to what he said was a calamitous 2.7 degrees rise in temperatures.
There is a serious risk that Glasgow will not deliver. Even if recent pledges were clear and credible, and there are serious questions about some of them, we are still careening towards climate catastrophe. And at the best case scenario, temperatures will still rise well above 2 degrees, and that is a disaster.
Environmental campaigners are planning to hold protests at financial centres in 26 countries to demand that banks stop investments in fossil fuels. The campaigners are calling on financial institutions not to lend money to companies and projects that use fuels such as coal, oil and natural gas. Pope Francis has held an audience with President Biden at the Vatican. The White House said the president thanked the pontiff for his advocacy for the world's poor and those suffering from hunger, conflict and persecution. The two men have long shared many concerns, as our Rome correspondent Mark Lowen explains.
They've met 3 times before. Today was their 4th meeting, and Joe Biden has a photo of a previous meeting framed on his desk in the Oval Office. So Pope Francis is very much a man who he seems to look up to for spiritual guidance. Joe Biden's spoken in the past about how Pope Francis offered him comfort and solace after the death of his son, Beau, and he accompanied the Pope for much of Pope Francis's US tour back in 2015-2016.
A leading Democratic politician in Myanmar has been sentenced to 20 years imprisonment by a court set up by the military junta that seized power in February. Win Tain, considered the right-hand man to Aung San Suu Kyi, has been jailed for treason. Our Southeast Asia correspondent is Jonathan Head.
Win Tain was an early target of the military junta which seized power in Myanmar in February. He publicly blamed the coup on the personal ambition of the military commander Min Aung Hlaing and called for non-violent resistance to it. He was arrested 3 days after the coup. A military court has found him guilty of treason under a catch-all law which criminalises any actions that could cause negative sentiment towards the armed forces. Win Tain's health is known to be poor, and there are concerns about him going into Myanmar's notoriously brutal prison system.
World News from the BBC. The United Nations has urged the Sudanese military to show restraint towards people protesting against Monday's coup. The Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, said there must not be any more victims. Health workers say at least 8 people have been killed and nearly 200 injured by the security forces, who have fired tear gas and rubber bullets. Soldiers have been tearing down barricades and searching and arresting people. Activists are calling for a 1 million-man march on Saturday. President Biden has called recent events a grave setback and demanded the restoration of civilian government. A court in Russia has handed lengthy prison sentences to 8 managers and fire safety or security officers for a blaze at a shopping centre in Siberia that killed 60 people. The fire 3 years ago engulfed the top floor of the Winter Cherry Mall in the city of Kemerovo. It was started by a short circuit in the lighting for a children's play area. 37 of those who died were children. The longest sentence, 14 years, was given to the former boss of the firm that owned the mall, Yulia Bogdanova. Belgium has handed over to Rwanda digital copies of more than 4,000 traditional songs and stories recorded by colonial officials last century. The material was held in the Royal Museum for Central Africa in Brussels. Here's Mary Harper.
Belgium's ambassador to Rwanda presented officials with a hard drive containing more than 4,000 traditional songs and stories. The director of Rwanda's Cultural Academy, Robert Mutuzera, said the recordings belonged to all Rwandans and would be posted online. He said he hoped they'd inspire a new generation of artists.
Mary Harper reporting. That's the latest BBC News.
And now to end the news, here is a recap of the leads. President Irfan Ali today appeared to back down from his long-held position that he would not be meeting with opposition leader Joseph Harmon to discuss key constitutional appointments. The government will circulate draft amendments to Guyana's electoral laws next week. One day after double murder accused Capildio escaped from the Lusignan prison, he was recaptured. And regionally, the Caribbean community is getting ready to approve the use of an antiviral pill to combat the coronavirus COVID-19. And that's the end of the news.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.